Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to this guide. Today we are talking about how to maximize your efficiency with souls farming, when to jungle, when not to jungle, how to be better at laning, how to not lose your lane, and why on God's earth is... Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this guide. Today we're going to talk about how to maximize your souls efficiency, when to jungle, when not to jungle, and how to be a better laner. I don't know why I'm spectating Wraith right now, because we play Bebop. And why are there numbers on the screen? Okay, anyway, so the first thing you just want to do is quite simply try to get the last hits of the first wave without getting any of them denied. So the first wave is worth 300 souls. So you can easily see at the top who messed up and who didn't. There is one thing that is very important when you're last hitting. It's to identify if your gun is good at last hitting when you're up close or far away. If you play shotgun characters, then it's easier to last hit closer because you have bullet spreads. You're more likely to hit the orb. And one thing that is common for every hero in the game except Bebop is that you are shooting a projectile. So because you're shooting a projectile, it means that the closer you are to the target, the more likely you are to last hit the orb before the enemy. And because 40% of the souls value in each trooper in the beginning is in the orb you shoot, it means that if someone denies every single trooper, you will have 40% less souls, and the other team will have 40% more souls, so that's an 80% soul gap if you deny every orb from the enemy. So last hitting is extremely important. One thing that is also very important is that you have to think about when you reload. One thing you'll notice is that sometimes you want to make sure that you have plenty of ammo when the last hit's about to happen. See, did you see how I reloaded there before shooting that trooper? It was because if that trooper gets down to 0 while there's a bunch of creeps available, then suddenly you might miss some last hits because you don't have ammo. So try to always be a little bit more preemptive and reload while the troopers are pretty high on health, because you have to remember that in the very beginning, the lanes are pretty equal. Both sides are just trying to last hit the enemy troopers, which means that when your troopers are about to get low for last hits, so are the enemies. In other words, you need to have quite a lot of ammo to be able to handle both. Also, we already got a first blood, so we're playing Wraith and Bebop here. And this is another thing to think about, is to identify the power of your duo lane versus the enemy. So we already killed Haze there less than 2 minutes in. We hit a pretty good hook. A lot of people hide behind the Guardian when they're low HP because the Guardian blocks bullets, but it does not block the hook, as you could see there, which is quite important to know. So depending on your matchups, you got to decide if you want to play aggressive or defensive. And there's a few key differences in how to play these lanes. For instance, if we were laning against Great Talon and Vindicta that has tons of poke damage, a lot of long range damage as well, we would probably try to just freeze the lane outside our towers. Now you may ask me, what is lane freezing? So lane freezing is a concept from any MOBA game, has the same concept. It's about trying to put the lane in a perfect spot where you can safely farm your last hits without being in danger. Because the further you push up on the map, the more risk you take by being damaged by the enemies, but also the more objectives can you catch. So for instance, whenever there's more jungles available, it would make more sense to push the lane up so you have access to more jungle camps. Because whenever your tower is getting pushed, you have to defend it, because it's a very important objective, especially in this game, because you unlock flex slots by taking down the Guardians. So in this matchup, we do not have to worry too much about that. Haze isn't a super strong laner in the beginning. Shiv is okay. They don't have like tons of like synergies or anything. So if you notice that you're having a good start and you're like hitting your last hits and you're slightly ahead in souls, you can safely just shove the lane. In 9 out of 10 times, lane shoving is usually always the play in Deadlock, because the more pressure you put on the map, the more space you have to also do other things like collecting souls from boxes, collecting gold statue buffs, and also farming jungles. But another thing, for those who don't know, whenever you last hit a trooper with a melee hit, the orb never spawns. It instantly gets confirmed. So if you're playing against a lane where a lot of your troopers are getting denied, try to get in a position where you can melee the troopers more often. And this is one of those examples where it would make a lot of sense to pull the lane further back and freeze it outside their tower, because then it's easier to melee those troopers without putting yourself in harm's way. This early in the game, there isn't that much else to do than to just constantly last it. But you can look here at the bottom here. You can see that there are a few camps spawn. So these triangles are simulating camps. So these are the small camps, and they spawn every 2 minutes. So this is the first example where you can get a slight souls advantage from the enemy team by trying to quickly clear out the trooper wave here and then take out the nearby camp. So we have one to the right of us right here, and they have one over there. So basically, this is the only way currently to gain a souls advantage before a few minutes later. So they're not like a super high priority because if you miss out a few troopers, it's not worth it. So the only time you want to do this is if you quickly clear out the trooper wave and then instantly go clear the camps. So that's pretty much the only thing we do now. At 3 minutes, the boxes and the golden statues will start spawning. So the boxes, they contain souls, and the golden statues contain various buffs. You can get cooldown reduction, you can get health, weapon damage, spirit power, fire rates. Oh, and here we go for another pick. And a little hooksy. It's pretty hard to kill Shiv this early, so we're kind of just... but you can see we have a lot of pressure here. This Haze is in trouble. And we're deciding to go for a tower dive here, but the Haze actually kind of managed to like sneak past us there. You can see here how important it is to get an early start, because what happened was, because I got a hook and a kill on Haze really early, we felt strong enough to do these tower dives. And these tower dives are only possible because we pushed the wave first. You noticed how the tower was busy, the Guardian was busy shooting our trooper wave. So because we constantly shoved the lane, this gave us an opportunity to actually get aggressive. And this is where I did a little mistake, by the way, even though I was fine. So another thing to remember is that people come back from death really quickly in the beginning. It takes a few seconds to respawn. So if you're tower diving them and fighting under their Guardian, do not stick around. So that was technically a mistake for me, but I didn't get punished for it, luckily. Haze comes back almost straight away, sleeps me, melees me, but because we have quite the advantage, we're almost like 1,000 souls ahead of them already, he chose not to aggress. And this was only possible because we started shoving the lane from the very beginning. Now, Wraith is a really good duo laner with Bebop because we both have decent weapons for last hit, but she also has full auto that boosts fire rate and also buffs nearby allies. So this is like an exceptional tool at pushing, which is why we managed to shove the wave very early on. And it becomes very hard for them to even make a play because they're constantly busy trying to defend their Guardian from being taken down. Now, they did make a change recently where the Guardian takes less damage in the beginning. And that was kind of because there was a lot of games where like a McGinnis or something would just like get one kill and they would just like push down the Guardian straight away. So now they have more resistance to your damage early in the game, and then they get less and less resistance as the game goes on. All right, so now we are killing this camp here, getting a little bit of extra souls. Notice how I did this while I cleared this camp while these troopers were next to my tower. And the importance of this is that now my Wraith was currently last hitting these souls while I was clearing the camp, meaning that I didn't lose any of the souls from the lane while I was clearing that camp. So that's like max efficiency. You'll notice that I already have 300 souls more than my laning mates, also because I got an extra kill. Anyway, we keep playing aggressive here now because we are ahead a little bit. We got a kill on Shiv. I'm getting chased down by Haze here, but I tell my Wraith that I'm getting chased and, you know, he chases after me. I also forgot to mention this is a ranked game in high ascendant, so that's like around top 500 to top 1000 NA. So all the players in this lobby are fairly good, and that's why I wanted to make a guide specifically on this game that I had, because I felt like this was a game where we did a lot of the right things. Here, you can see now, also quickly, let's just pause this. Two things just happened. One of them is that we kept playing on the advantage we had on the Haze and the Shiv. Like, they should never pick a fight with us because we are almost 2,000 souls ahead of them already. So they lost the lane pretty hard, but you can come back from this pretty easily because the game has very strong combat mechanics like the urn and like getting increased souls from killing the enemies based on how much souls value they have. But anyway, two things have happened now. We are at 5 minutes, and now you'll notice that the medium camps have also spawned. So now this is where you can start scaling ahead of your enemies. Now there's a lot of stuff to do on the map at the same time. But the first thing you need to make sure of is that your lane is pushed up, because now this becomes a tug of war. Because there are so many objectives available on the map now, it means that you want to make sure that your lanes are shoved out so that you have space to go into the jungles. Now we are blue team here. It's for some reason upside down when we are watching the replay. But essentially now it becomes very important to shove the lane. Like at this point, you should never freeze the lane again. Like freezing the lane before 5 minutes is completely fine if it helps you farm, if it helps you stay alive, or if you think that your matchup is not in your favor. Like if you're playing a Haze into like a Grey Talon or something, whatever like is a weak matchup to you, it's completely valid to like freeze the lane outside your Guardian. But after 5 minutes, you're gonna lose a lot of farm by doing that, because it means that every time the enemy shoves the lane up to your Guardian and you're just freezing it there, they can run around and farm a bunch of jungles, and then they can come back to the lane. And because you haven't actively been pushing the lane, our Guardians are completely safe. However, there's also another thing that's pretty important, and that is ganking and killing enemies, especially as Bebop, because you get a permanent bomb stack whenever you get a kill. So because we had a team fight over here, and we basically got chased by Haze and Shiv, and we fought in this basement, we are almost at the next lane. So because I know that this is a McGinnis, it means that McGinnis players, they do one thing and one thing only. They run against an objective until the objective blows up, and then they die, they respawn, they go back to the lane, and they run until the next objective until it dies, and then they die, and they do it again and again. So how can you take advantage of this? By ganking them, because you know that they are going to play aggressively, especially against a Grey Talon, because he doesn't have great lane shoving skills. Anyway, another thing to mention is that everybody gets their ultimates on 3,000 souls. So whenever you notice that whoever you're fighting against is slightly under 3k and you're slightly over 3k, that is your best chance to have an advantageous duel against them. So that is just something to have in mind whenever you reach your 3,000 souls. This is your biggest power spike and your biggest advantage against an enemy. Of course, some ults aren't necessarily that good for dueling, but if you have someone like Wraith, for instance, Wraith has the biggest possible power spike at 3k. Grey Talon has a great power spike at 3k because he can help other lanes with his owl as well. So always pay a lot of attention to the soul count of everybody on your team and the enemy team. Same with Geist. If you're ganking a Geist and she has her ult, then you're trolling, because she's gonna health swap you and then you're gonna die. So now that because we fought under here, I now told my teammate that I'll come for a gank since I'm nearby anyway. So I'm just hiding behind here now and waiting for the McGinnis to show up. I don't show up on the minimap because I'm not in vision. I'm basically going to try to just give this guy an advantage. And recently I started doing level 2 hook first, so I get increased range. And this gives you a much bigger ganking potential because you can rely on your teammates to do the damage. You need to just be able to actually hook them. Let me see. Okay, so there we go. We hit a good hook here. We turn around and we hook her into the tower. She's very low, do a little chasey and a punch. And like I said, because Bebop gets permanent 5% bomb damage every time you are involved in a kill, as long as you bomb them within 12 seconds, this is great. And now here's something that is pretty interesting also. Now, you'll notice something here. So Wraith is now at our Guardian, and this lane is about to crash into our Guardian. And we are at 5 minutes. So one thing to remember about also how souls farming works in dual lanes is that up until 8 minutes, it is always beneficial that both of you are in the lane to get every soul. Because after 8 minutes, the souls are split, meaning that if you're both in the same lane and you click an orb, you only get half the value each. But up until 8 minutes, you both get the full value of every single trooper in the lane, meaning that it's always beneficial for your teammates to try to freeze the lane for you until you get back. So for instance, if you're jungling near the lane while you're waiting for the lane to crash into your Guardian, make sure you tell your teammate, like, freeze the lane for me, don't auto attack the troopers, I'll be there in a second. So what I did, I quickly ganked here, I helped Great Talon get a kill, then I told my Wraith, please freeze the lane, I'll be there in a second. I used my speed boost to speed all the way back here. I could have just like traversed across as well, especially because there's a jump pad here, but I was also low and I wanted to just reset. So yeah, so this is a pretty good usage of the zipline speed boost as well. Yeah, it still splits the souls if you're more than 2. So basically up until 8 minutes, it's always beneficial for you to be 2 people in the lane whenever a trooper dies. And this is why some people, they start jungling too early and they just farm the jungle. And then here's what happens, right? Let's say you just leave the lane at 5 minutes to jungle because you're like, oh, I'm going to jungle, I'm going to get so much farm. And then you're ignoring the lane completely. And then here's what happens. Not only will you not get that much more souls than your laning teammate, you're also using up all the camps in the jungle so that when you hit the 8-minute mark, and these jungles matter a lot more because now you are sharing all the souls in the lane and you no longer get the full value but only half of it. You've already killed those camps. So you're actually making it even worse for yourself because now you've like taken away a lot of the camps that you could have farmed when it made more sense to farm it. It used to be 10 minutes, but now it's 8. Most of the timings that used to be 10 minutes are now 8, except the bridge buffs. So now I've told my Wraith, please freeze the lane. I'm coming back because we're still not at 8 minutes. So every soul we get, see, and I make it back in time to be able to catch this wave. And now we both get the full souls value. So instead of jungling, this is much more valuable because now we're technically just like increasing the value without any downsides. And then since we now are shoving the wave, the other thing I do now, I instantly go to this camp. Because right now there are no troopers to kill in the lane, so I can quickly go to this camp that spawned at 5 minutes and clear it without pretty much missing a trooper, and then I go back to the lane. And you'll notice that the troopers are still there, okay? And now we go for a kill here on McGinnis. It's a pretty good time to fight because we're ahead. So like knowing when you're strong or not is pretty important. You can see that we have a lot more souls than them. And Wraith has a very strong single kill ability too. So far this is like a pretty solid, like I chose this game for a reason because I felt like I played this game really well. I'm also going to show you guys the stats at the end of the game. So you can see how like I performed against my teammates. And I know like you don't always want to just like show games where everything is done really well, but I hope it gives you like an idea of something you can compare to if there's something you're not sure about what to do. So because we have taken down the Guardian in our own lane now, I'm starting to focusing on other lanes. The next thing, and this is another reason why lane shoving is so important, is that now that we have taken out the Guardian in this lane, not only have you removed their option to use the shop, even though of course the secret shop isn't too far away, but it also means that this lane is just going to be pushing by itself all the way up to the walker now. Whereas we still have the Guardian in our lane, meaning that the waves are never going to threaten the walker for now. Another thing is that it also means that we are closer to getting a flex slot, because the more Guardians and walkers you take down, the more flex slots you'll get as well. The third thing is that this means now that you've shoved this lane up, you have access to more areas of the map. And we call this like map control or map pressure. And this is why lane freezing is really bad. Because imagine if I froze the lane up here now, it means that all of these camps will guaranteed to be farmed by the enemy. But because we're starting to shove this lane up, now this territory suddenly becomes a lot more scary to go in for the enemies. And another thing is that this also now makes Hayes feel more pressured because he doesn't feel that safe because this area is so pushed up. So the first thing we do now is like try to threaten this area too and slowly gain more map control. So let's see how we deal with that with Hayes now. You can notice that there's 3 of us here and there's no one to help Hayes for now. I'm going to turn the minimap back to only seeing what we see. because I want to like make it accurate for you guys when you are playing, because you can't see where everybody is like this. So if I press F4, now it shows only what Sapphire sees. All right. So now I'm basically telling my Grey Talon, okay, I'm coming over to Haze because my lane is pushed up and we've farmed the jungles behind. You can see that Haze is still farming some here, but we're basically cleared most of the camps near our lane. So now I'm like just trying to see if I can get Haze. We miss a hook, unfortunately. And now I steal this camp. So this is one of the camps that Haze wants to farm, and it just makes perfect sense to try to steal that. And then my Grey Talon, knowing that I'm here to gank, he keeps shoving up the lane. But then I'm like, okay, you know what? I don't want to. I don't know where the enemies are, so I go back. And that is because, once again, you'll notice how quick the lanes get pushed back because there's no garden here anymore, so they have to manually shove the lane back. So Shiv is here, and now my Wraith tells me that Shiv is kind of pushed up. So instead of me just gambling on hitting a hook on Haze here, I see that Grey Talon has 6k and the Haze has 3k. I think like, okay, you know what? I want to prioritize just defending my Guardian again to keep the advantage we built in our lane earlier. So I kind of like I cut my losses. I accept that I didn't hit the hook, and I go back to defending my own lane. All right, so we got Shiv here. We hit a hook. We do a 180 into a Wraith ult. And boom, and he's gone. And another bomb stack to us as well. We always enjoy a little plus bomb. So you'll notice how like we've been doing in general a pretty good job at keeping our Guardian alive. And now see both Paradox and Abrams, they join my fight and then they instantly run back to their own lane because they noticed that Lash and Infernus tried to push the Guardian. And we want to keep these Guardians alive. So now that we've started to clear out more camps, this is another important timing, and this is 8 minutes. Now that we have pushed the lane back out and gotten a kill, I go and take a camp that is like, this camp is like slightly lower priority because it's further away from the lanes, but it's kind of one of those camps that they're just taking on the way. So at 8 minutes, there's another important timing, and that's when the tier 3 camp spawn. That is this one. They have the biggest souls value. I believe it's around 750 souls if you kill all 3. And the slot machines also spawn. The slot machines gives you tons of souls, and it gives you a golden statue buff as well. So these are pretty beneficial to take out as early as possible. But of course, it depends, like if there's an important objective to fight around and like defending a tower and getting a kill on Shiv, of course, that priority comes first. And the other thing is that if you have ults like Bebop ult, for instance, whenever this ult is ready, you want to use it on the camp because that's like the biggest way of gaining a soul advantage. So right now you can see that we have 40k souls and they have 26k souls. But you'll notice that as soon as the urn spawns, they will start abusing the comeback mechanic because it's really hard to win the game this early, especially with the where they changed it so the urn now goes to your half if you're more than 10% souls behind. Anyway, so we're just going to clear this camp, and then we quickly want to farm all of this before it gets contested by the enemy. And then notice how, again, you always clear the lane first. Whenever the lane is hitting your tower, that's just going to be souls lost if the Guardian just takes out those. So now we just get 2 free lanes here shoved up really quickly. You just want to auto attack them and clear them as soon as possible. And then we go back to clearing the nearby camps. See, this is like the perfect weaving where you always want to prioritize the lane first and then you weave in the camps after. But because we're after 8 minutes now, it also means that the souls in the lane are no longer effective for both of your teammates. So in an ideal world, I would have my ult here and instantly nuke the tier 3 camp. But sometimes, you know, you end up in a team fight and you feel like you need to use the ult to kill them. But especially on heroes like McGinnis and Bebop, be extra wary of when you use your ult around these timings because it could be an absolutely free tier 3 camp. And here's another thing. These statues that I just meleeed, the golden statues, they have a lot of really good buffs and they have 3-minute spawn timers. Now, the thing about the golden statue buffs that is pretty important to remember is that they increase in value throughout the game. So they have a 3-minute spawn timer and they start spawning 3 minutes into the game. But then after 10 minutes, you get a higher amount of stats per statue. And then after 30 minutes, you gain an even higher value. So if you're looking at the timer, like right now, it's not worth it for me to wait 50 seconds to melee this and someone else might get them too. But there are some cases where, like, for instance, you're deciding whether or not you're going to go for a box run or a golden statue run. Try to think if like you're close to 10 minutes or close to 30 minutes, because you're going to get a bigger value out of each golden statue if you wait till just past 10 minutes or just past 30. Another thing that is important to remember, guys, is the usage of the jump pads. So the jump pads help you traverse around really quickly. You can always go for a silly hook as well. Let me see. I actually hit one of those the other day. But yeah, it's pretty important to remember to use the jump pads. Now we also got our Tesla bullet. So this is my stealth hybrid build. And because we are going to farm Shadowy, which is like a very expensive items and a very expensive item, we go Tesla bullets first. So now you can hear that Shiv is meleeing. So this is like where we're contesting objectives. So sometimes when you're ahead in soul farm, you always want to figure out how can I take advantage of this situation? Because right now we're obviously a lot stronger than them, but the game is by no means over. So how can we transition this lead into actually being closer to winning the game? So the first thing you got to do is to stop farming on your side of the map. You want to contest the farming on their side of the map first, because your side of the map is safe most of the time. If you're ahead, then it's much more likely that your side of the map is safe. So what we do now is that we notice that Shiv is meleeing the camp here and that Hayes is farming the other camp down in the basement. So we like three of us, we kind of collapse on them. Also because there's not really that much more to do here. Both of these guardians are taken out. We're not really threatening the walkers yet. And there's only these two camps and a tier 3 camp left. So it also just makes sense for us to kind of go for a play as we have this much map control. We also have information that there's 3 heroes on the enemy team in this lane. So we also know that this is most likely a pretty good fight for us if we know that someone is there. So you'll see what happens here. We can hear Shiv meleeing up there. And they already, Grey Talon and Wraith already ganked Hayes in the basement and instantly killed him. So now it's just me fighting Shiv alone. But because I'm this far ahead, even Shiv gets taken out really easily. And this just transitions into almost a free walker, because there's like, we already know, it's always important whenever you decide to push a walker, is to know where the other enemies are. It's important to like know when it's smart to push a walker. Now we're at the 10-minute mark. Now there's 2 new things available. It is the bridge buff on both sides. You can either get survival, it gives you more health and more health regen. You can get the casting buff that gives you more spirit and cooldown reduction. You can get the gun buff, which gives you ammo and fire rate. And you get movement, which gives you zipline speed, more stamina, and more movement speed. And it's random. So we get the survival buff this time. And this is the first time where a big comeback mechanic is introduced. So you'll notice when this urn gets picked up is that now the urn delivery has different locations depending on how far ahead you are in souls. So if you are more than 10% ahead in souls, you now have to hand in the urn in the enemy half. It is somewhere around here. So this makes it much harder for us to gain a bigger lead, and it makes it much easier for the enemy team to come back. Because sometimes you don't want to be that far up. It's not like that easy to fight next to walkers and stuff like that. And it forces you to take fights in areas that are harder to fight in. And it's just basically a mechanic they introduced recently to make games last longer. Because if the urn was like it was before, where you just like run it straight across, when you notice that we have so much map control that we are on their half in every lane, we could just keep running the urn and then eventually we'll have enough souls lead to win. But because this has changed, it means that a lot of cases like this, where we're now 20k ahead, you can notice that it's still really hard to win unless you contest every urn, because it's going to be so easy for them to hand in the urn in their half, and they get much bigger souls rewards when they kill us compared to the other way around. So right now you can see it's a 17 kills to 2. So like if this was an older patch, this game would be over in about 5 minutes. But you'll see what happens next. We get the bonus health and the max regen buff. And now I have my ults. So this is a very natural time to go for the tier 3 camp. We break some boxes on the way for extra souls. And the Bebop ult does 25% more damage at the tip compared to under you. So you want to use the tip of your ult and not stand inside the camp to kill them faster. And we break some more boxes. Always just like break boxes and statues whenever you see them. It's just added value all the time. And now you can see here, guys, look at the urn. This is where they have to deliver the urn now. Do you see how far we need to go to contest this urn now? So when you're kind of just like playing halfway on autopilot, or like you don't want to overextend, this is just like the freest urn in the world for them. And look at the souls count now after he hands it in. See that? Suddenly they're only 12k behind. Oh, and now he got a kill. See how quickly they're coming back? We have 17 kills and they have 3, yet they're only 10k behind. And that's just the way this game is designed right now, where the combat mechanics are super strong. But the best thing you can do is constantly try to work on objectives and try to farm camps that are contested camps. So for instance, this camp is right in the middle. So it's always favored to the team that has the most map control. So both these camps are really important to get as soon as the lane is pushed past the middle. Because it's technically just as easy for either team to farm it. So you'll notice now that like this is a fairly high ranked lobby. So you'll notice that there's no like extremely big souls difference between each player. We have a little bit more than the rest. But it's kind of like there's only so much you can do sometimes, especially when you're fighting a lot of other people for farm. But you'll notice we're kind of trying to do what we can. We're looking for a walker push here, and I'm trying to see if I can get Haze as well. Haze runs into the TP. Now, I don't think that's a good choice, because that gives me a free hook. And basically, she's going to go down pretty fast. So that's definitely a misplay from Haze there. I don't know exactly what she was thinking, but as soon as I saw her running into the TP, I kind of just knew that that was a hook kill. And the reason why we knew that it was safe to push this walker was because our teammates here, Paradox and Abrams, they're currently fighting Infernus and Lash. And this is where communication is very important. Wraith also killed the walker in this lane. So it's not even about winning this team fight over here. It's basically just a distraction maneuver. So especially because they are most likely playing an outnumbered fight over here, their only goal is to drag out the fight. If they get chased, then they can like spend a lot of time getting chased by Lash and Infernus and so on. That's a huge advantage for us because it means that we have time to push 2 walkers. So now you'll notice, if you see here, all of our walkers are alive and 2 of the guardians are alive. This means that the enemy has 0 flex slots. They need to kill 1 more guardian to get a flex slot, whereas we have 2 extra flex slots. Now, that doesn't really matter that much when your net worth is this, because you can tell, like, I'm not even using my flex slots right now. But the longer the game goes on for, the more it matters to gatekeep flex slots, because sometimes you can see that the soul count is completely even between 2 teams, but because one team is gatekept from having flex slots, they have to have like 1 or 2 items less than you, meaning that your actual power level might be much higher because they're holding on to a lot of souls because they can't buy the item because they don't have the space for it. And this is why these walkers are so important, and it's all about knowing when it is smart to push them. Another interesting thing about like being in a fairly high elo lobby, you'll notice that all these camps are gone. This entire map here, this area of the map is completely dried out of any objectives. And this is because as soon as we take this map control, the most important thing we gotta do is also steal the farm from the enemy. So you'll notice that the stuff on our side is actually still up, and that's because we can always farm that when there's nothing better to do. So it's actually much more important that we deny the farm from the enemy before we farm our own stuff, because we have an advantage. And this is something I see that people do wrong a lot, is that when they have an advantage, they don't actually use it for anything. They just farm on their side of the map, and then the other guys farm on their side of the map, and then you're actually not really taking advantage of how far ahead you are. And then they'll deliver 1 or 2 comeback urns, and then suddenly the score is even again. Because in most games, if there's a 19-4 kills, that wouldn't actually be this close. But you'll notice that we almost have the same ability points and we almost have the same soul count because of this comeback earn mechanic and because they gain more souls from killing us than the other way around. So the next thing I do now is take one of these, we call them loser camps because they're like in the far corners and they're like in general the least important camps, but they're very good camps to steal because they're so far up that these are camps that are considered like 100% safe to farm for the enemy. So if you take these ones out, it's one of those like farms where you guarantee to deny them some souls. So we're just quickly gonna farm this one, and we're almost all the way up in their base. Now, one thing that the enemy does well is also instead of just defending, they're also matching us by taking down our walker. And this is something that you'll see a lot, especially in high elo, where instead of just defending, they will also try to counter push another lane. So that forces guys to go back and defend. Now Mirage uses his ult. Not sure if that was the play. And this is where I will say that maybe we got a little bit too cocky. Because now we are 3 people all the way up in their base and they are alive and they backed out from the previous team fights. And they kill all 3 of us. And because they get so much more souls from killing us than the other way around, it means that that was a big souls advantage for them. But it also means that now Paradox and Abrams killed the 3rd walker. So one thing to just have in mind here is that constantly whenever a fight breaks out somewhere, you always have to think about what is the most I can gain out of this somewhere else on the map. So yes, we were like outnumbered here, then they took a walker. And then when they were fighting here, we took a walker here. So now we're in the situation where they only have 1 walker remaining. And I have my Shadow Weave. And as soon as I have my Shadow Weave, I play super aggressive, maybe a little bit too aggressive, but this is where team communication is important. You'll notice that my Wraith here is matching my tempo, even though he doesn't have Shadow Weave. But so basically what I'm doing, I'm using my Shadow Weave to scout ahead and look for kills. So I tell my Wraith, hey Wraith, like let's skip past the lane and let's look for some kills. I hear that Shiv is in here, so I wait for Wraith to get closer and then I go for a hook. And then Haze shows up in the middle of nowhere. But Wraith has her maxed ult. And suddenly we get 2 kills out of that. And this is one of the reasons why I love using Shadow Weave, is because you can use it as a scouting tool. Because you're completely silent, you can use it to like look for audio cues. And on my way back, I also steal one of the camps. Because once again, guys, as soon as you are on the enemy's half of the map, you want to take advantage of stealing as much farm as possible from them. Because not only are you gaining farm, but you're also making them lose farm. So it's always about denying objectives from the enemies as well. So yeah, so right now I'm really strong, so just keep going for these kills. Missed my hook. Can't believe it. Bebop main misses his hook. So this fight becomes a little bit silly, and it's probably time for me to back out because I'm playing an assassin build now. So the only thing I want to do is to like stealth in, look for a pick, and then get out. Get some more statues here, more buffs. 6% ammo from 1 golden statue, by the way. We're still only 10k souls ahead, and that just like shows how strong the combat mechanic is right now. And this is something I forgot to mention earlier. This tunnel has a ton of boxes and a ton of statues. So whenever you're farming the tier 3 camp on this side of the map, either if you're farming the camp first, you're planning to farm the camp and you are in your secret shop, going through this tunnel and breaking all these boxes and all these urns gives you tons of buffs and souls. And then you can just take the stairs up and farm the tier 3 camp after. This is like, okay, this is what we call a slightly risky / selfish play. So our team is running the urn right now. So if our team wasn't ahead this much, they would have definitely raged at me for not being there. But this is what you call a calculated risk. And as long as you communicate with your team that you're not going to be there because you're on another side of the map, you're going to gain a bigger souls advantage this way. Because if everybody's like, see, everybody's fighting over the urn now, but we still managed to deliver it, but I'm not there at all. It's definitely something that you can't always do. And it's very important that if you plan to make one of these solo plays, that you actually communicate with your team. because now our Paradox just died. And both me and Wraith, we are just instantly split pushing. See that? So now these guys are fighting a 3 versus 6 or a 3 versus 5 over there. And in the meantime, we are just slamming down their base. But one thing that is important to remember is that the way to win the game is to take down objectives. So even if we lose that team fight, but we take out both their shrines, not only are we like a step closer to winning the game, we also gained a flex slot. And there you go. Now we have a flex slot. Flash comes back to try to defend, instantly gets blown. Wait, I forgot to mention this. How did I kill Haze there? Wait, did you guys see that? Poor Haze is on the zipline back to base and just gets blown up because a lash flies next. Anyway, another thing is that, let's just pause for a second here. Once again, right? You would think that the souls gap would be bigger. We have more than twice as many kills as them. We have much more objectives than them, but the soul count is pretty even. But it is important to remember that the soul count doesn't necessarily represent exactly how close you are to winning a game or not. So right now, we have taken every objective in the base except the patron. Meaning that if we win one team fight now, we can basically win the game. If you notice another thing now, guys, look at the soul count. And there's two reasons for that. Sometimes you make selfish plays. Like maybe the team fight where we handed in the urn could have gone more in our favor if I was there. That is called a calculated risk. Sometimes, especially if you play heroes like Haze and Seven and Infernus, like really like scaling hardcore carries, sometimes you do sacrifice your team to be able to get some extra farm. But it's just, like I said, very important that you communicate it with your team. But however, me and Wraith were not there, but we did push the base. We took out both base guardians and both shrines. So then it's like, okay, we lost the team fight, but we actually gained more souls and gain more objectives out of it. So it's not necessarily that bad. It's just something to have in mind that it's not necessarily to be like, oh, Jonas told me to just like split push whenever you guys are fighting, you know, and then you die and then you don't get nothing out of it. So there's a lot of like variables to take into account before you choose to do that. Anyway, me and Wraith, we are basically just teaming up a lot here. And it's kind of funny because me and Wraith, we've played together ever since the laning stage. And we just keep doing this thing where like we are in the enemy half because we are both very strong and we have very good ganking capabilities. So we are like just very deep in their base looking for kills. We find Mirage here, put a bomb on him, and he's dead. And we're just like making it a very unsafe space for the enemies. And you'll notice I'm still breaking boxes. I'm still looking for extra buffs and stuff. Yeah, see that? That was 200 souls. Now we get some Chungus items. We get a silence glyph and we get a surge of power. So now our bombs are actually starting to chunk quite a bit as well. And you'll notice like I'm starting to be pretty confident in my ability to just blow them up. See that? That's a shiv, by the way. And I really like the way this Wraith is continuously like following up on my calls here. So obviously you can't hear the voice comms, but a lot of this is about communication. And now my teammates are like, okay, we're gonna kill mid boss, but I'm low health, so I decide to go back to base. I will say at this stage of the game, it's very easy to get like kind of overconfident because you're 20k souls ahead, you're feeling good, and it's very easy to make mistakes. And some of these mistakes can be pretty important. For instance, right now, I could have been at the mid boss and helped them a bit, but you also gain some extra souls from killing 2 waves plus farming the walker. But we just gave them a free rejuve. Now, this is obviously, this is a bad play by me. So basically what I do there is I'm trying to get ready for Lash's ult and hook him out of it. And you can blame me or you can blame someone else on the team, but Of course, someone should have been there to parry, but I think we were all very scared of the Lash ult. And because they have a pretty strong comp for contesting mid-boss, because the Tornado from Mirage is very good as well, it's basically a little bit of a sloppy mid-boss play. Like, we are very strong. We can definitely play that much better. I could have not pushed those 2 waves and been in the center and stuff and guaranteed that I hit the hook. There's a lot of things that could have done better, but this is one of those examples where sometimes mid-boss calls can lose you so many games even if you're ahead. That's why I always like say like, unless you're playing in a tournament with like a full squad, don't take risk mid-boss. It's almost never worth it. I feel like 80% of the time you have much more to lose than you have to gain from it. Because if you're already ahead and you're already playing well and you're winning most of your team fights, you can keep on just like building that slow lead by taking more camps and like playing better objective gaming. But anyway, so we lose this mid boss, but it's not necessarily it's not like you just steal the crystal and then suddenly you're back, because we still get a lot of souls from killing you. So for instance, in this case, they stole mid boss, but we killed 3 of them, right? And then I am fighting a Shiv right now who is 10k souls less than me. Let's see if I can kill a Shiv that is 10k souls less than me. Ah, you'd be surprised. Yep. Anyway, if the game was a little closer, then this would definitely be the turning point for the enemy, where they stole the crystal from us and now they can slowly push back. Because not only does the mid-boss buff give them more health, a shorter respawn time, it also makes all the troopers have more health, so all your lanes are now naturally pushing. And they still have this comeback souls. They still are more than 10% behind, so they can still just like pick up the urn and just run it. And if I press F1 for a second, you can see that McGinnis now is just going to get another free urn. And this is why I'm saying that, like, because of the way this game is designed right now with very strong combat mechanics, unless your team is like super on top of things, they can run 2 of these comeback urns and suddenly they're almost back in the game. So even though they currently have 12 kills to our 35, we are almost even. So that's just something to have in mind. I know some people don't like that that's there because it almost makes it like feel not rewarding to be this far ahead. But at the same time, it also means that more games are gonna feel competitive, because it's never fun to have to play for 30 minutes and just knowing you're gonna lose. So if there's always a chance of coming back, it sucks when you're like in the lead, of course, but it's gonna be, I think it's going to be the general quality of most games is going to be more even. And I think that's their goals. They want the match quality to go up. Because if not, this game would have been over like 5 to 10 minutes ago. But either way, I am still pretty strong and I'm looking for solo kill opportunities. So I noticed that Infernus is jungling here because there's only so many camps left. We go for a little play here. Silence Glyph. And then instantly blow him up. But then Mirage TPs. And now it's suddenly getting a little bit iffy. He's going for a kill, but look what happens next. Oh yeah, the Great Talon from downtown. These kind of solo plays are pretty risky. I don't think that was necessarily a great play. We did get a 2-for-1, so that's not bad. And it's one of the things you can do with Shadow Weave builds, especially because you also get bomb stacks for kills. But it's kind of one of those things that it's kind of like an overconfident play that you make when you're far ahead and you know that you can kill someone. But in a lot of cases, this is also what we consider throwing. But either way, we're pretty strong right now, and our team is currently pushing as I'm about to respawn. You'll notice that most of the objectives on the R side of the map are not really there. And now we're pretty late into the game. We're at 23 minutes in. Most of the base objectives are gone, and most of the camps in the middle of the map are gone. And because we have already farmed all of this on our side of the map, it means that it's like super beneficial for us to fight now. Because we are still ahead a little bit, 14k right now, it's beneficial for them to try to even out the soul count before fighting. And the way they would do that is to wait for another urn that comes in 1.5 minutes, or just because they have more camps available on their side of the map. So our reaction to this is obviously we don't want to just look at you guys farming because you guys have more objectives available and more jungle camps available than us right now. So it means that it's like a perfectly smart time for us to fight them. And we want to deny their farm, and we also are a little bit stronger than them. And because I got 2 kills for 1, it also means that they are now playing a 5 versus 4 while waiting for the response. Another thing is that, again, this is about communication, but because they got the mid-boss kill earlier, it means that the lanes were really pushed up. So the first person that respawns in the base should always be responsible for like shoving out the lanes a little bit again. But it's important to also tell your team that that means that they cannot expect you to come back to the team fight as soon as possible. Because you could have just ziplined in instantly and help your team, but your base would get ran down by troopers. And it's important to remember, most important than anything else, this game is about objectives. So that fight kind of is already over, so there's no point in like ziplining back in, and you can start farming a little bit again. And once again, the gameplay slows down a little bit, and people kind of farm a bit until the heroes respawn. So right now for us, it's not really beneficial to wait for the next turn. Because actually, you know what? No, I'm actually wrong. It is beneficial for us to wait for the next turn. You know why? Because now we are less than 10% ahead. So the next urn is not going to be a comeback urn. It's going to be a normal one that goes straight across. So this could be a good opportunity for us to grab the next urn and secure it. There's another... There we go. There the urn is. Okay. So another fight breaks out. This haze constantly sleeps me while I try to combo people. It's really annoying, and it's also really effective for them. But either way, this is an important fight. It decides who's going to get the next urn. Mirage is in the back, about to blow up. He's dead. At this point, I feel very strong, by the way. I feel very strong right now. I have 34k souls. I'm like 5 to 10k ahead the other people, and I want to fight. I want a duel. We get 2 kills here in that team fight. And we have both Paradox and Bebop, meaning that we're constantly just looking for picks right now. Because McGinnis doesn't know I'm stealth there, I can like run super deep. But this damn haze is constantly just waiting for me and sleeps me whenever I try to hook, so that's well played by them. But either way, we're pretty much getting a free patron out of this. And I will say that this is like a fairly big throw from the enemy, because they start like trickling down before they have to. We get another nice hook on Infernus here, and at this point it's kind of just like now the game is kind of just not possible to win anymore. So if you're the enemy team in this situation, my recommendation is that unless the patron has been actually taken out and fallen down, you shouldn't start like trickling down, dying one by one. You should try to wait for your team to respawn so you can get one final team fight. Oh, that was a little bit of a dirty hook. Also notice how the bomb did 680 damage there, by the way. That's why I love this hybrid build. Yeah, so I would say the reason why we won the final team fight was because after getting a pick, they kept fighting. So it's also about cutting your losses at the right time. So this was like probably one of the cleanest games I've played so far. Very few mistakes. I'm also gonna like show you guys the stats really quick. I'm just gonna hide my camera. You'll see I have 37k souls. I have the most kills, most player damage, and most objective damage. And that was because a lot of the times when a fight broke out, I also decided to split push, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you win a team fight if it doesn't result into more objectives taken out. I think a lot of people coming from FPS games especially, they don't know that like the main purpose of a MOBA is to destroy the enemy's base. So it's about finding the balance between those things. And this is a fairly high elo lobby. There's a lot of Ascendant players here and a few Phantoms. So it's not like these are terrible players either. So a lot of the time you have to take into account that the other players are also trying to do the same things you are doing, so you just have to do them better. But yeah, that was my guide on how to have more souls efficiently and have a more clean laning stage. I hope this video helped you, and if the video did help you, I would really appreciate if you subscribe to the channel and leave a comment what your best tip is for getting better at farming souls and laning. Thank you so much for watching.